Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let me try this again. Good afternoon. Welcome to our 2025 Terence R. Keeley Vatican lecture, brought to you by the Nanovic Institute for European Studies here in the Keough School of Global Affairs. My name is Clemens Sedmak and I serve as director of the Nanovic Institute. I'm delighted to welcome you to this lecture in the Elizabeth Nanovic Seminar Room. This lecture is possible thanks to the generous support of Terence Keeley and his family. I would like to express my gratitude for their presence to our university president, Father Bob Dowd, to Vice President Father Austin Collins, to Dean Mary Gallagher, who will be here if not in person then in spirit, and all the others who think they are worthy mentioning in my introduction. A special word of welcome, of course, to our distinguished speaker, Msgr. Onyemuche Ekpo. Let's give him a round of applause. Yes. Msgr. Ekpo will be introduced separately, but I can disclose already now that it is a great honor to have Monsignor with us. As Keeley Vatican lecturer, you represent the Vatican and symbolically also Pope Francis. Did you know that Pope Francis visited Philadelphia on September 26, 27, 2015, but he never came to Kansas City? Anyway, Msgr. Ekpo also represents the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. Integral human development is the defining theme of the Keough School of Global Affairs. The Nanovic Institute for European Studies is part of the Keough School. As logic would have it then, integral human development is also a defining feature for the Nanovic Institute. And as we all know, the colors of the Vatican city-state flag are yellow and white. It is so appropriate that Msgr. Ekpo will deliver his lecture on campus that was snow white in the morning and is marked by the Golden Dome. So this is the choreography of this afternoon. For certain events, it takes very special people to introduce very special people. Our university president, Father Robert Dowd, graciously agreed to introduce our guest of honor and Keeley Vatican lecturer. So I will introduce President Father Dowd, who will then introduce Msgr. Onyemuche Ekpo, who will then introduce his lecture. After that, Msgr. Ekpo will speak for 42 minutes and 37 seconds, and then we have some time for Q&A with the final question at 6:20 sharp. I would ask you to prepare brief, brilliant, and benevolent questions. And then we'll give a little gift to our speaker, followed by a reception in the forum. A few words about our beloved university president. If one were to compare an academic initiative with the Dicastery, Father Robert Dowd has anticipated the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. The Dicastery for promoting integral human development was announced in 2016 and started operations in 2017. Father Bob Dowd started the fourth program in Human Development Studies and Solidarity in 2008, a program within the Keough Institute for International Studies, today part of the Keough School, that addresses the challenges of development confronted by those living in extreme poverty. Informed by the principles of Catholic social teaching, the fourth program emphasizes the inherent dignity of every human person. In other words, it is a program that has been established to enact integral human development. In 2017, thanks to Father Dowd's efforts in research, advocacy, and fundraising, Brother Andre Hospital opened in Dandora, Nairobi, Kenya, as a tangible sign of solidarity and walking the walk. Since 2017, many things have happened. Reverend Robert A. Dowd's tenure as Notre Dame's 18th president began in June 2024. A faculty member in Notre Dame's political science department since 2004, Father Dowd earned an undergraduate degree in psychology and economics from Notre Dame, and a master's in African studies and a doctorate in political science from UCLA. Prior to his election as president, Father Dowd served as vice president and associate provost for interdisciplinary initiatives. He was ordained a priest in the Congregation of Holy Cross in 1994, the year I met my wife. He was ordained a priest in 1994 and has ministered to students on campus for many years as a priest in residence. The Keough Hall community is proud to be the one to cause Father Bob sleepless nights when they are noisy, which they rarely are. Welcome, Father President. Thank you for being here. May I please ask you to kindly introduce Msgr Ekpo.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Clemens, for that very kind but a bit long introduction, and a bit too kind as well. I appreciate it very much. Let's give Clemens a hand. He's doing a great job at the Nanovic Institute. And many thanks to the Nanovic Institute for European Studies here at the Keough School of Global Affairs, and of course to the Terence Keeley family for establishing this Keeley Vatican lecture series. It's hard to believe, but this is the 20th year of the Keeley Vatican lecture series. So truly grateful to the Keeley family, and in particular to Terry Keeley. You know, we often talk about Notre Dame as a place for building bridges. I've talked a lot about that throughout the year, beginning with my inaugural address. And I know that Terry Keeley is an example of an amazing bridge builder. And when you think about it, in many ways, this lecture series is about building bridges, bridges between Notre Dame and the wider church in service of the common good. And so I just couldn't be more grateful for the generosity of the Keeley family. And it's my great pleasure this evening, of course, to introduce our speaker, this year's speaker, Msgr Anthony Ekpo. While it's his first time to Notre Dame, it's not his first time connecting with Notre Dame, because Msgr Ekpo, he actually inaugurated his book, launched his new book on the Roman Curia in Rome, and we hosted that at the Notre Dame Rome Center. So truly grateful that Monsignor would make his way to Indiana. He brought a bit of the Roman sun with him here, and we're grateful for that always. Ordained in July 2011, Monsignor Ekpo is a priest from the Diocese of Umuahia in Nigeria, with a doctorate in systematic theology from the Australian Catholic University. In 2021, he obtained a doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical Gregorian University. He served as an official at the section of the General Affairs of the Secretariat of State before his appointment as Undersecretary of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development in April 2023. Monsignor also serves as a chaplain to the Holy Father, as well as interpreter and translator in Igbo, English, Italian, and French. Of course, the heart of Monsignor Ekpo's talk this evening is integral human development. And this, of course, is a theme that resonates deeply with us here at Notre Dame. And of course, it's the defining theme of the Keough School of Global Affairs. We call to mind that there's more to development of the human person than just the material world, than just growth in material wealth. But to grow as a human being entails a lot more than that. And we're also called to mind that the development of each person is somehow connected to the development of all. And at the heart of integral human development is the idea of dignity, human dignity, God-given dignity. And that cannot be earned, right? That can be recognized, or it can be ignored. It can be trampled upon, but it's God-given, and it's something that each of us has, and it's incredibly important that our work here at Notre Dame always be dedicated to recognizing the dignity of each and every human person, and promoting awareness of the dignity of each and every human person. And of course, this is at the heart of Monsignor Ekpo's work in the Dicastery for the Promotion of Integral Human Development. So we're so grateful to have you here, Monsignor Ekpo. Thank you for making your way to Northern Indiana in the middle of February. And this evening, we look forward to your lecture, The Reform of the Roman Curia and the Promotion of Integral Human Development. So please join me in extending a warm Notre Dame welcome to Monsignor Anthony Ekpo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I have never been introduced like that before in my life. And I say this as a man who is very, very proud of his humility. I've never, ever, ever been introduced like that. I've been, a Nigerian, and knowing that in Nigeria, less is not more, more is more. So for me, this is not just more, this is most I've ever heard. And so thank you, Father Robert, for your kind words. It feels really good to be here. When I was coming, I was like, are we going to get there yet? And I calculated it's about 30 hours if you calculate the layover and everything. From Rome to Australia is 30 hours. And coming here requires a lot of time, but it's very, very, very refreshing. When I was in Australia, we used to joke because Australia is 9 hours ahead of Nigeria and 9 hours ahead of Rome too. So especially when I was a seminarian, my friends, we used to joke, do not worry about tomorrow, because the tomorrow you are worried about is already yesterday in Australia. And for you here in Notre Dame, it's so true, because I think Australia must be about 17 hours ahead of Notre Dame. So it's really good to be here. Now that I've softened you up, I better get on with the lecture. Professors and Dean, Keough School of Global Affairs, distinguished guests, Reverend Fathers, Father Provincial, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm very privileged to be invited to take part in the prestigious Keeley Vatican lecture hosted by Nanovic Institute for European Studies here in the University of Notre Dame. First of all, I would like to again thank the President, Father Robert Dowd, and Professor Clemens Sedmak for their kind words of welcome and introduction. The theme of my presentation this evening, as you already know, might get the good O, is the reform of the Roman Curia and the promotion of integral human development. And I'm sure you know that people, especially journalists, they are always interested in news about the Roman Curia, especially when there are rumors of laziness and infighting in the Roman Curia. So people believe that the Roman Curia is a stumbling block, sometimes even for the Pope. And that's why I think the other day a friend of mine told me that the Roman Curia was invented by Satan. And I was like, are you kidding me? Invented by Satan? He says, yes, it was invented by Satan to show God the enormity of the harm and havoc he can cause the church. And there's another friend of mine who believes that the Roman Curia was originally set up to comfort the afflicted. But in the end, it's now afflicting the comfortable. And that's very, very interesting, that the Roman Curia is afflicting the comfortable of the society. Now, I'm sure some of you may have heard the anecdote about a little baby that was abandoned around St. Peter's Square. So if you've been to St. Peter's Square, we'll see St. Peter's Square shortly. This little baby was found in St. Peter's Square, and half of those who gathered around the baby believed that it must be a baby that belonged to one of those who work in the Roman Curia, and the other half was unsure. Then an argument ensued. They were saying, no, this is not possible. Some people are saying, yeah, of course, it must be a baby of one of those who work in the Roman Curia. And then one elderly Monsignor, a bit of a wise owl, said, look, hang on, I firmly believe that this baby does not belong to anybody who works in the Roman Curia. And I have two reasons. So everybody was all ears. He said, two reasons. Well, he said, the first reason is that a baby is always a fruit of love between two people. And he said, in the Roman Curia, there's no love. There's no love here. You can talk about fratelli tutti, siblings, or there's no love here. And then he says, secondly, you require about 9 months to produce a baby, no? 9 months to produce a baby. And he said, nothing gets done in the Roman Curia within 9 months. And I used to be frustrated when I was in the parish. You know, you sent stuff to Rome, and it took forever for them to attend to it. Anyway, setting aside these humorous, if not entirely untrue comments, my presentation is divided into two parts. In the first part, I will reflect chiefly and briefly on the Roman Curia and the major reforms that have been carried out over the years. And the second part will be a reflection on Pope Francis's specific reform of the Roman Curia and how it has deepened and continues to deepen the Church's commitment to promoting integral human development in the entire human family. As Christians, we believe in the incarnation, God becoming one of us. We believe that God is not just a God who is living in a far distant island, but a God with mud on his boots. He has collaborators who assist him in the salvific mission. God needed Mary's yes and Joseph's yes to bring about the salvation of the humankind. And so does the ministry of the Pope. You know, Pope Francis spoke about this early in his papacy when he was elected Pope. And this reminds me of what the Archbishop of Canterbury, when he was Justin Welby, when he was elected, appointed, he was asked, "Do you find this office liberating or imprisoning?" He paused and said, "I find it liberating." And that's what I see in Pope Francis. The papacy kind of liberated him and seemed to have set something free in him. And so when he started at the dawn of his papacy, so to speak, he said that the Pope is neither a superman nor a star, but an ordinary man who laughs and cries and sleeps calmly and has friends like everyone. And in Canon 300, and I can't resist it because I'm a canon lawyer, we will always put the code of canon law. Although some people believe that the code is a dark side of the gospel. But however, we need people who will kind of keep us on the straight and narrow path. Canon 331 of the Code of Canon Law states that the Pope possesses supreme, full, immediate, and universal ordinary power in the Church, which he is always able to exercise freely. But this does not mean, and the Pope argues that this does not mean or in any way diminish the fact that the Pope is still a normal person who needs the help of others to do his job as the chief pastor of the universal church. And that's what the Roman Curia is for. And over the years, popes have called upon the assistance of qualified men and women in the task of governing the universal church. The earliest papal assistants were in no way organized into a systematic staff. Yet, it could be argued that they marked the beginning of what would later become the Roman Curia, which in the course of time developed into a grand organization capable of rendering great service to the Pope and to the entire church. People sometimes use the terms Roman Curia, the Vatican, the Holy See interchangeably, but they are three different realities. They are related, but they are totally different. So why we make reference to the Vatican, and we must have to keep in mind that the Vatican is not Holy See or the Roman Curia. They're not the same. They're related. And so I would take just a little time to explain the difference between the three terms. The Vatican is a state structure organized or recognized within the framework of international law as a result of the 1929 Lateran Treaty concluded between the Holy See and the Kingdom of Italy. It is a landlocked territory which consists of a walled enclave located in Italy inside the city of Rome. And this tiny territory guarantees the Pope's absolute independence and freedom in ministry as the universal pastor of the church. The Pope has the fullness of power of governance, which he usually delegates to various entities within the Vatican City State. And the Vatican City State is under the sovereignty of the Holy See. And here's the kind of the map of the Vatican City State. Some people call it a handkerchief of land because it's a tiny little place. There you can see St. Peter's Square, and then the Vatican Gardens, the Vatican Museums, and St. Peter's Basilica. And we have this handkerchief of land today thanks to Emperor Constantine, whom I'm sure historians here would acknowledge that he is the inventor of Christianity in some sense. He was the one who donated this handkerchief of land to the church around 324 AD. And what happened? He went out on a battle against Maxensus, his brother-in-law. Maxensus uh, was married to his sister, and he couldn't agree to join forces with Constantine to form one empire. So Constantine, at the Milvian Bridge, went out on a battle against him, and then defeated him and paraded his head throughout the city of Rome. And so, meanwhile, the mother of Constantine, Helena, was praying her heart out for the conversion of her son. And it wasn't until the conversion, or after this battle against Maxensus, that Constantine realized that it was the hand of God that helped him. Because the night before, he had a vision. And in that vision, he saw a burning cross. And under the burning cross was an inscription that was written in Greek, but today is written in Latin. In hoc signo vinces. In or through this sign, you will win. But then he didn't make sense of it until the following day when he defeated Maxensus, and he realized that it was the hand of God that assisted him. And of course, this goes back to what the existentialist philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said, that we live our life forward, but we understand it backwards. So our life makes sense only in retrospect. And it was then that Constantine said, I'm going to donate this piece of land to the church. And he built the first basilica there. And this wasn't the center of excellence as it is today. It was known for its bad wine, and there were graves and everything in that place. But then he built the first basilica and the first apostolic palace. And then, but he couldn't convince the Pope at the time to move over to this place. They lived over at the Lateran Basilica up until the 1600s, when they then decided to move over to the Vatican City, what's now the Vatican City State, to live permanently. But before then, they used to come here just for holiday, and then they go back to the Lateran Basilica area. Now, in regard to the term Holy See or the Apostolic See, this, first of all, means the Pope himself. And then, second, the various dicasteries of the Roman Curia. So it depends, especially in the context of canon law, it depends on the context will tell you if you are referring to the Pope or to the dicasteries that work under the authority of the bishop. So the nature of the Holy See does not and cannot fit comfortably within the criteria of conventional state sovereignty and personality. The Holy See is a sovereign subject of international law that possesses a full international legal personality. Although it is not territorial in nature, the Holy See enjoys the same right and obligations of other states. It has a legal personality sui juris, in the sense that it is independent from any territorial authority or jurisdiction, even if at present it exercises sovereignty over the Vatican City State. As a subject of international law and a participant or an observer in the activities of international bodies, the Holy See's major scope is to promote international peace, the common good, and respect for human dignity and rights. It participates fully, consciously, and actively with other sovereigns in negotiating and formulating international legal instruments that are the principal means for achieving specific goals relating to global affairs. And currently, the Holy See maintains diplomatic relations with about 183 countries. And here you can see, it's a tiny photo, a photo of the Pope with the diplomats, the ambassadors of embassies accredited to the Holy See. So they have their meetings at the beginning of the year, around this time, I think in March, either from January to March. It depends on what the Pope is doing. So they have their meeting with the Pope. All the ambassadors of embassies accredited to the Holy See, they gather in the in this hall. They gather in a hall called Sala Reggia, which is the regal hall, which used to be where the popes, where popes in those days received their visitors. And after that meeting, they go into the Sistine Chapel, to have their a photograph. And so that's the Pope there with the Cardinal Secretary of State, with the Secretary of the Section for Relations with States and International Organizations, with the substitute of the first section of the Secretariat of State, and with the representative, the head of the third section of the Secretariat of State, who is in charge of diplomatic personnel. And finally, the term Roman Curia refers to the complex of institutions that assist the Pope in the exercise of his supreme pastoral office for the good and service of the whole church. It is at the service of the Pope and of the bishops in ways that correspond to each one's specific nature. It performs its functions in the Pope's name and by his authority for the good of the whole church, and does so with evangelical spirit, working for the good and service of communion, of unity and building up of the universal church, while also attentive to the circumstances of the world in which the church is called to carry out its mission. Because we believe that the church is in the world, and we have to preoccupy ourselves with the issues of the world as well. And that's why in the Second Vatican Council document called Gaudium et Spes, the joy and hope, it says the joys and hopes of the entire human family, also the joys and hopes of the church. So we are in the world, and so we have to make the kingdom of God come here and now. At this point, I will refrain from offering more details about these correlated terms. But if you would like to learn more about some of the discoveries that I recently made, you may find a copy of my recent book, The Roman Curia. So that tells you how humble I am. As I said before, I'm very proud of my humility. It's a bit of a commercial there, so I thought I should slip in a bit of commercial. Now, the Roman Curia has undergone reforms over the years. It has undergone many reforms, but the major ones were the ones done by Pope Sixtus V, Pius X, and Paul VI, John Paul II, and now Pope Francis. Pope Sixtus V, who was Pope in the, now, these are the organs of the Roman Curia. Just quickly, they are just the different organs of the Roman Curia, beginning from the Secretariat of State to the Dicastery for Communication, and then some other institutions, the Institution of Justice and Institution of Finance and offices. They are all part of what we call the Roman Curia, and they assist the Pope in addressing issues related to different things. Like the Dicastery for Evangelization, they are in charge of the spread or the spreading of the gospel, the formation of new churches, new dioceses, and they are also in charge of the appointment of bishops in those dioceses. But here, going back, this is Via della Conciliazione. This is where most of the curial institutions are located. They're here, except I think my dicastery is one of the dicasteries that are not located in the Vatican City State. We are out in the peripheries in whoop whoop land. So, but thanks be to God, the periphery today has become the center. So we are the center of excellence. So this is where most of the curial institutions are located. Now, going back to Pope Sixtus V, who was the first pope, that's him there. He was the first pope to establish a clear and permanent system for the governance of the universal church. Before him, popes did different things. They asked their nephews to be in charge of this and that, and many institutions were established. Some of them weren't real. They could be, the dicastery for the opening of the envelope, and the dicastery for this and that and the other. But he was the one who said, no, enough of this nonsense. We have to establish a very solid and permanent structure and system for the governance of the universal church. And he created 15 congregations and implemented the ecclesial vision of the Council of Trent. Mind you, the 1500s were a very turbulent time of the church. we had the Protestants raging war against the Catholic Church. And, the church was kind of there, taking the punches, it kind of hit me. And the church was kind of taking all the punches from the Protestant. This man said, we have to organize ourselves. We have to put our house together, get our acts together, and then address the issues that are facing the church. So it was a period of anathema. If anyone says that what Monsignor Ekpo is saying is not true, let him be anathema. So these are the expressions that was used at the time. But he said we have to organize the Curia into a very, very solid and permanent system. And he created these congregations. And his reform was followed by that of Pope Pius X. Pope Pius X wanted an internal renovation of the internal life of the church. So again, the 1900s was also a very interesting period in the life of the church. So he wanted a more internal renovation, the church looking at itself and asking itself whether it's missed the road. Now, he reduced the congregations because the one that was the 15 congregations that were established by Pope Sixtus V, some of them weren't really needed. And it was at a time, too, when the Pope, what used to be the curial institutions, were also meant to look after certain issues in what was called papal states at the time. So there was no separation between the Roman Curia, as we see it today, and the governance of papal states, and also the governance of Rome as a diocese, because Rome is a diocese. So it was all kind of bunched up together. And he said, no, we have to reduce the number of congregations and the tribunals. He made them 3, and then he created again 5 offices. So, but his main task was to renovate, it was internal renovation of the church, so to speak. And so he eliminated obsolete offices and streamlined the central administration of the church. Now, his reform was followed by that of Pope Paul VI. Paul VI, with his apostolic constitution called Regimini Ecclesiae, which is the governance of the universal church, that's the title of his document, carried out a major reform in the life of the church. He was the first to highlight the moral characters of those to be chosen for the work in the Roman Curia, from the cardinals to the officials. So that also happens today. We call it de moribus. So like when I was asked to work in the Secretariat of State, priests from my diocese were consulted. So they sent letters through apostolic nunciatures, both in Australia and in Nigeria, to inquire, make inquiries about me, to see if I'm really worthy to work in the Secretariat of State. Now, in the Secretariat of State, there's this book called Annuario Pontificia. I don't know, some of the priests here may know what it is. A red book called Annuario Pontificia that has the name of important people in the life of the church, bishops and everything. And for us, in the Roman Curia, your name is not written in that big, fat red book until you pass what they call Anno della Prova, which is your the year of, kind of the trial, if you like, year, probation year. So you have to do it. And when your name is written in that book, you have no idea the joy, because it means your name is not written in, with pencil, it's not written with a biro, a pen. So it means that it's permanent. And there's a story about a priest who worked in the Curia for many years, and he died and went to heaven. And at the pearly gate, he saw the big fat Annuario Pontificia. I said, oh my goodness, I know this book. And St. Peter said, look, if your name is in that book, you are not entering here. So you are not entering. There's no way you are entering here. Anyhow, the Pope Paul VI established the moral characters of those who work in the Roman Curia, and he was also the first to establish the limit of tenure, what we call the quinquennium today. So the 5-year limit. So you serve for 5 years. If you're a priest or a religious consecrated person, you go back to your diocese. It can be renewed for another 5, but that's up to the superiors to decide. So he also introduced the automatic cessation of the central administration of the apostolic see when the see is vacant. When the Pope dies, we cannot carry out any serious administration. We can't, for instance, the Congregation for Bishops cannot announce the appointment of bishops. It cannot, because the power we have is a vicarious power from the Pope. So he was the one who introduced that principle that when the Pope dies, everything has to be suspended until a new Pope is elected. He was also the one who enabled a closer rapport between the Roman Curia and diocesan bishops, as well as episcopal conferences. And he introduced regular meetings amongst the heads and officials of the different dicasteries of the Roman Curia, especially when there is a need to resolve interdicasterial issues. The reform carried out by Pope Paul VI was inspired by a less bureaucratic and more spiritually oriented, but administratively competent vision of the Roman Curia. So he did the hard yakka, as we say in Australia. He did a lot to clean up the mess and to establish a strong structure. He wanted to bring to fruition the conciliar vision of the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council believes in all of us as the people of God. From the bishop to the last of the faithful, we all are in it together. We have that intuition, that sense of the faith, the spiritual gift that God gives us or has given us in baptism. So whether you're a bishop or a priest, or we all participate in the life of Christ as the baptized, and each of us are called to that baptismal, to keep our baptismal promises. So he was the one to push for the realization of the vision of the Second Vatican Council. He also pushed and also explained in several contexts the understanding that the Curia is not a finished product. Because for some people, they believe in, as it was in the beginning, is now and ever shall be, a word without end, amen. No, he said no. The Curia is always in need of reformation. Curia semper reformanda. He used to say it in Latin. And in those days, if you want to say something very serious, you have to say it in Latin. So, and in line with the Second Vatican Council Fathers, Pope Paul VI wanted to achieve the internationalization of the Roman Curia. So he was the one who said, look, we have to internationalize the Roman Curia. So it's not just an Italian business, and it's not business as usual. We are going to get people from Africa, from Asia, from America, from South America. We are going to get everyone here, and we want to make the Curia reflect who we are as the people of God. And the house where I live in Rome, in Via della Traspontina, is called Paolo VI. So that was, even Santa Marta was also built, with that in mind. Because if you invite people from overseas to work at the Roman Curia, you have to somehow or other provide accommodation for them. So he was the first one who said, we have to make the Curia reflect who we are as the people of God. Then he was followed by this great Pope, Pope John Paul II, who in 1988, again, carried out a reform of the Roman Curia with an apostolic constitution called Pastor Bonus, the good pastor. In terms of the way Pastor Bonus was structured as a document, one can argue that it was substantially identical to its predecessor, the change that was carried out by Pope Paul VI, with some major novelties, of course. Amongst the novelties are the classification of the curial institutions into the Secretariat of State, into congregations, tribunals, and offices, and the division of the Secretariat of State into two major sections, which is now, we have three sections, because Pope Francis, with his reform, added a third section, which is responsible for our diplomatic personnel, because he said we have to pay more attention to our diplomats, nuncios, and all those who are working as diplomats of the Holy See. Now, one major thing he did, Pope John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, was he established the definitive distinction between the work of the Roman Curia and the work of the Diocese of Rome. Now, I kid you not, that can be quite, it's not an easy thing to do, because the Diocese of Rome, he is the Bishop of Rome, the Bishop of Rome. And in those days, things were very blurry. And he said, no, we have to put a stop to this. We have to separate the Curia from the Diocese of Rome, because the Curia assists me as the universal pastor. But the Diocese of Rome, even if I'm the Bishop of Rome, the Diocese of Rome is a separate reality. So he made sure that that distinction was made. Then we come to Pope Francis, who is the present Pope. He reformed the Curia with a document called Predicate Evangelium, preach the gospel. You have to preach the gospel. And in terms of structure, much of what already has been in place has been maintained. But we were previously called congregations, but are now called dicasteries. The dicastery is a posh word for Vatican department. I didn't know what it meant until I started my research in 2021 after teaching a course in Leuven in canon law. I said, what's this word dicastery means? What type of animal is dicastery? So the Pope Francis said, we don't want to have these separations, congregations, pontifical councils and everything. We want to have dicasteries. And he called them dicasteries. And perhaps the biggest structural change concerns the dicastery for promoting integral human development. But I will return to it shortly. But by calling the principal Curia institutions dicasteries, Pope Francis is confronting the assumption that congregations were considered to be more important than pontifical councils, and thus has emphasized that all the organs of the Roman Curia are juridically equal. Because in those days, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith considered itself more important than the Pontifical Council or Corunum or Pontifical Council for itinerant and migrant people. No. The Pope said, no, we are going to call them all dicasteries. And this would appear to be a minor achievement, but the proper name of someone or something is deeply tied to their identity and how they see themselves. And having worked in the Curia for nearly 10 years now, I know what I'm saying. That name, dicastery, which then levels everybody, is very important. Because when you name something, you give that thing identity. And this is language philosophy 101. And talking about naming and names, this reminds me of a couple that had their first child. And so they said, oh, we have to get, when you have your first baby, you want to do everything. Like I said before, less is not more, more is more. And for me, I'm the sixth child of 7 children. So I'm the forgotten child. So by the time my parents got to me, they said, oh, we've been there, we've seen that, we've done that. No. So I was baptized, I think, 2 weeks after I was born. Whereas my oldest sister was, they made a hoo-ha about her and baptized her the next day and everything. So she got all the perks of being the first child. So this couple went to their parish priest for the pre-baptismal consultations. So the priest said, look, what name do you want to give to your child for baptism? And they said, oh, Father, we don't really know. The priest said, okay, don't worry. Here, let me give you the Litany of the Saints. So, the Litany of the Saints has all the names of saints and everything. And you know that Litany of Saints usually begins with Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Christ have mercy. So Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, and then they start, the names of the saints. Saint Anthony, pray for us. So he said, just look through the list and see if anything jumps out at you and come back tomorrow. So they went home and then came back, and the man said, Father, we found a very, very beautiful name for our child. I said, which name did you choose? He said, Kyrie eleison, which means Lord have mercy. But Pope Francis was determined to make every Curia institution, the principal ones, to call them dicasteries, and inviting the Curia structures to be more obviously operate according to theological principles, really principles that come from Catholic social teaching. For example, the dicasteries of the Roman Curia should operate according to the principle of subsidiarity in relationship to local episcopal conferences and dioceses. deepening the core from previous reforms. But Francis, in his new reform in Predicate Evangelium, insists on the spiritual and pastoral effectiveness that the Roman Curia is called to. And that's not easy, to insist on the spiritual and pastoral effectiveness of the Roman Curia. And sometimes you do meet internal resistance, and they're subtle and indirect. There's a story about a cardinal secretary of state, because in the Roman Curia, the Secretariat of State is the closest to the Pope, and the cardinal secretary of state is a very powerful person in the Curia structure. So the cardinal secretary of state was a powerful man, and he gave the Pope a very, very tough time. But this pious Pope, a very holy man, endured everything and then died and went to heaven, and so was the cardinal secretary of state. So when the cardinal got to heaven, he said, I would like to see this man. I'm sure he was a holy man. I'm sure he's in heaven. And he said, okay. So they were looking everywhere to see if they can find the Pope, and they couldn't find him anywhere. So they were kind of looking. He said, he was a holy man. I gave him a tough time, but he really weathered the tough situation, and I'm sure he's in heaven. Anyway, so they kept looking for him, and they couldn't find him. So then St. Peter paused and said, how long were you the Cardinal Secretary of State for the Pope? He said, I was the Cardinal Secretary of State for 25 years. Oh, you should have told me. I'm sure he's in this section reserved for martyrs. So let's go there. And surely he was there. He was there. So it's not always easy for the Pope to effect or bring to fruition his mission and vision for the Church with the assistance of the Roman Curia. In his 2016 Christmas greetings to the members of the Roman Curia, Pope Francis said that the reform of the Roman Curia should be understood in two ways. First, it is about conforming the Roman Curia to the good news, which must be proclaimed joyously and courageously to all, especially to the poor, the least, and the outcast, and to the signs of our time, and to all its human achievements. And second, it is about conforming the Roman Curia ever more fully to its purpose, which is that of cooperating in the ministry of the successor of Peter. And Pope Francis believes that for this reform of the Roman Curia to be effective, both the reformer and the reformed must know that it is not all about them. It is rather about Christ. And I see this in Pope Francis. He has humanized the papacy in very new and refreshing ways. He has humanized the papacy. And 2 weeks ago, when we had our usual meetings, because he meets with us as a dicastery, the superiors of our dicastery, the prefect, the secretary, myself, and the other undersecretary. So we were talking about the statue of sleeping Joseph. There's a Joseph in his private apartment, so on a table, a little altar. So there's Joseph there sleeping. So we were chatting about it. And he said, oh yes, he had the statue for years. And when he has a very difficult issue, he writes it and then puts it under the statue. And but he went after saying that, he said he believes that Joseph had sleep issues, that he had sleep problems, and we're kind of like, oh, he said that's extra biblical, maybe, if not mid-rev. Where's that recorded? He said no, he had a sleep problem. Why? We asked. He said because Joseph was so worried about the way things were unfolding in his life. Each time he goes to sleep, something changes in his life. So he said, I'm not going to sleep again. So this is ridiculous. Because he goes to sleep and the angel turns up out of the blue and says, your wife is going to conceive and she's going to be a child. And then after the birth of Jesus, he went to sleep again and he told them, take the child and the mother and escape to Egypt. He said, no, I'm not going to sleep again. So he was so worried that his life might change if he sleeps. So to see the Pope tell such jokes is so refreshing, because he humanizes the papacy, and he has that very affable, simple, charming and disarming way of relating to people. And I think it goes back to our belief in Jesus being fully human and fully divine, because in his being fully human, we see the divinity of Christ. And this is what Pope Francis embodies. So when he says that for a true reform to take place, both the reformer and the reformed should know that it is not all about them, it is about Christ. In other words, structure and organizational reforms are secondary. That is, they come afterwards. The first reform must be the attitude. So therefore, the reform is rooted in self-emptying of both the reformer and the reformed. The self-emptying opens the way for discernment, which is an inner attitude that drives us to be open to dialogue, to the encounter with others, to finding God wherever God wants to be found, not only in narrow or well delimited and restricted confines. To reform, therefore, for Pope Francis means to initiate or accompany historical processes, to work slowly but surely without being obsessed with immediate results, focusing not on ideological abstractions, but on times, places, and persons. And this process requires patience, tenacity, sensitivity, and faith. And it means surrendering to God's will. And this in turn means to stop controlling processes with purely human criteria. It is a journey that requires total abandonment to the sure guidance of the Holy Spirit, who knows when it will all end and who knows its outcome. So for Pope Francis, reforming the Curia is not simply about organizational changes. It is about renewing our commitment to service, to justice, and to the common good, both within the church and in the world. And he has really refreshing ideas that he is putting out there. And one of them is the existence of lay and the ordained in the work of the Roman Curia. The Pope has appointed many women, for instance, in the Roman Curia. We have Sister Brambilla, Simona Brambilla, who has just been made a prefect of the Dicastery for consecrated persons. Now, it's a very courageous Pope that can do that. So he appointed her the prefect and then made a cardinal the pro-prefect, which means like a number 2 of the Dicastery. Now he's leaving that revolution of love. And in my own Dicastery, for instance, we have Sister Alessandra Smerilli as the secretary, and I'm the undersecretary. And we have another undersecretary who is a cardinal. And about 3 weeks ago, the Pope, at an interview, announced that Sister Raphael, who was here last year and who did this prestigious Keeley Vatican lecture, is going to be the president of the Vatican City State. Now, that is a big deal. And he said in March, he announced it. Everybody was like, is that true? Yeah, he's announced it. So he's made the announcement that she will become the first female president of the Vatican City State. Now, that's a huge departure from where we were, but it also emphasizes who we are. And there are a lot of women too, like in the APSA, the institution that oversees the patrimonial inheritance of the Holy See. The number 2 there is a woman, is a sister. There are many lay people. A lay person is in charge of the Dicastery for communications. And now we exist together. In the Dicastery for family, faith, and life, we have the prefect, who is American, who is a cardinal. We have a secretary, who is a very young, 30, I think Jason is not up to 40, and married with kids. He is the secretary. Now, we have a bishop, who is an adjunct secretary of the Dicastery. Now, he's kind of dislocating the Roman Curia in a very creative way. Now, you look at us and you say, yes, this is reflecting who we are as the people of God. And that's not easy. It requires someone who is courageous, a man who has allowed the Holy Spirit to work in and through him. Now, a few months ago, after I met Professor Clement Sedmak, I requested for a copy of his book on enacting integral human development, and he gave me that excellent book, and I read it, and it was very, very inspiring. And there, the argument in that book was that the integral human development, our understanding of integral human development should be dignity-based. And that has been what our dicastery has been working with. And a lot of people in my dicastery, especially in the second section, the research and reflection section, have been reading that particular book. And integral human development is a concept that is central to Pope Francis's papacy and is connected to his reform as well. And as we all know, integral human development is not, GNP, it is not consumerism or conspicuous consumption. It is not, sustainable development goals. It is not just for this third world. It's for everybody. And so for Pope Francis, our faith in Christ, who became poor, was always close to the poor and the outcast, is the basis of our concern for the integral development of society's most neglected members, the preferential option for the poor. And this is what Jesus did when in that particular gospel where Jesus declared what I call his job description. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I've been sent to bring liberation to captives and to proclaim a year of liberty for everybody. Now, that's his job description. And so he requires us to meet the basic needs of others. And Pope Francis always emphasizes that. He constantly teaches this so that all may live in dignity and grow in human fullness. Pope Francis speaks about the need for a holistic approach to human development that encompasses not just material well-being, but also spiritual, social, and environmental dimension. And the creation of our dicastery, the dicastery for promoting integral human development, can be said to be Pope Francis's greatest and clearest expression of interest in the issues concerning integral human development. And so now I permit me to share with you a video that describes who we are and that also highlights what I've just said, that in his reform, one of the highest or clearest point in Pope Francis's reform is his interest in the creation of our dicastery and in the issue of integral human development. That's a photo of us there. Now, so could someone cue the light or some of the lights? So I don't know if you can see. Okay. Don't go to sleep, eh?
All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures.
Tu che circondi con la tua tenerezza tutto quanto esiste.
Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty.
Inondaci di pace, perché viviamo come fratelli e sorelle senza nuocere a nessuno.
O Dio dei poveri, aiutaci a riscattare gli abbandonati e i dimenticati di questa terra, che tanto valgono ai tuoi occhi.
Integral human development is the name for what all of us want. Development is what everyone wants for themselves, for their family, for their people. That is a meaning of life itself.
Non è sicuramente crescita economica, non è tendere ad avere sempre di più, non è legato solo alle dimensioni materiali di una persona. Sviluppo umano integrale significa sviluppo di tutta la persona in tutte le sue dimensioni e di tutte le persone, nessuno escluso.
Our dicastery works in 3 steps. The first step is to listen.
It is the section that creates a two-way bridge between the local churches and the dicastery.
Il punto più importante per noi, per essere in dialogo in maniera che noi siamo a servizio, non siamo sopra le chiese locali, è proprio quello di ascoltare, di capire cosa sta succedendo e di capire quali sono i bisogni più profondi.
We try to listen to the local churches. We try to listen to the bishops and those who work with them to see what are the obstacles that people face in that place, the obstacles to their integral human development.
Ostacoli legati al degrado ambientale, non si può vivere dove non si riesce neanche a respirare. Ostacoli legati alla mancanza di lavoro, a non essere trattati in maniera degna quando si lavora, ma quasi come schiavi.
The challenges are always seeing these people struggling, frustrated, being abused, living under violence, and not really being able to assist in the immediate. So it requires a lot of patience. Well, I pray to always be patient, and I'm not sure, though sometimes our contacts are not very patient, because when a person is burning, it's difficult to be patient.
The second step is to reflect on these sufferings.
Sembra una catena di montaggio, ma non lo è. Si lavora molto insieme e si è divisi per le competenze che ciascuno deve avere in ogni sezione.
La sessione ricerca e riflessione cerca di identificare degli esperti in università, in centri di ricerca, che stanno lavorando con i temi che le chiese ci portano come preoccupazioni, come priorità. Facciamo una rete per arrivare a degli strumenti che possono tornare alle chiese come un servizio.
And we call these concrete orientations, pastoral orientation. It's to help the bishop and his co-workers to accompany their people in facing their challenges.
Le sfide ci mettono in movimento. Il fascino è quello, da una parte avere davanti delle complessità, delle realtà come guerre, come ingiustizie, e dall'altra essere a contatto con degli esperti, con dei progetti, delle organizzazioni che davvero stanno facendo qualcosa, stanno muovendo dei processi, e questo porta speranza.
And then the third step is to give back what we have learned to the church that shared with us, and at the same time to make this learning available throughout the church, around the world, and to the larger public.
Noi come sezione comunicazione abbiamo l'opportunità di dare la voce agli ultimi, davvero riportare gli ultimi al centro, quello che Papa Francesco spesso ci dice, queste periferie esistenziali, farle ridiventare il centro della narrazione. È una sfida, è faticoso, perché in un mondo dove 90 voci dicono di avere paura dell'altro, essere quella che dice accogliamo il prossimo, accogliamo l'altro, non è facile. In un mondo dei social anche, dove è molto più facile comunicare qualcosa di negativo perché va subito virale, essere la voce che dice qualcosa di buono si può fare, anche se è più faticoso, ovviamente è più difficile arrivare, però quando lo fa porta davvero tantissimi frutti.
My hope for our dicastery is expressed maybe in this cross which I wear. It's made from the wood of an old fishing boat that migrants use to try to reach Europe, to reach Lampedusa. My hope for our dicastery is to help the Church to recognize how Christ is crucified in all the different places and in all the different challenges of the world, and to accompany the people in their suffering, and to bring Christ's love, His mercy, to them in their difficulties, so that they may feel blessed and especially given the gift of hope.
That's in a nutshell what we do as a dicastery. And as directed by the Curia reform, our goal is to create a culture of collaboration and communion inspired by the gospel. Our goal is to help the church to carry out its mission of serving the development of each person and of the whole person, of promoting life to the full for each and every one, as Jesus said in the Gospel of John, chapter 10. And apart from our collaboration with local bishops, as has been highlighted here, because our primary focus is the local bishops, the local churches. Apart from our collaboration with bishops, we also collaborate with experts and institutions like Notre Dame. Our Dicastery has had and still has a relatively long and fruitful collaboration with Notre Dame, as it's been pointed out by Father President before. And a few years ago, we were happy to receive 3 young professionals from America. Oh, you were there? There you are. And who else? Who else from here? Because this was before my advent, my triumphal entry into the Dicastery.
There were 2 others who were not here.
Who are not here. So there you are. It's a living witness. So they worked in our Dicastery for 2 years. Now, that's no mean feat. So thank you. And it's a sign of the very, very close relationship we have with experts, with universities, and also as part of our effort to listen to the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth, and to ensure that no one is left behind. And recently, I think it was in March last year, Notre Dame assisted us in organizing a very important meeting of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar. So the conference was on conflict in Africa in the context of the exploitation of natural and mining resources. And we were talking about it the other day. I was talking about it the other day with someone. And recently, as has been pointed out by Father President, Notre Dame Rome campus organized and hosted the launch of my new book on the Roman Curia. And these and other examples, some of which are still in the pipeline, are true examples of synodality and collaboration between a curial institution and a Catholic university. It also shows that Notre Dame takes seriously the issues that we as a dicastery are dealing with. Number one of which is ensuring that every and any obstacle impeding integral human development is removed from the entire human family. And I'm really pleased to know that Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs continues to deepen its commitment to integral human development by seeking ways of ensuring that human dignity is respected, the common good is promoted, and that the needs of the most vulnerable and marginalized are prioritized. And that's actually the gospel, if you ask me. We will be judged on the last day on how generous we are to those, our brothers and sisters most in need. We will be judged. That will be the yardstick for our judgment on the last day. And it also shows that Notre Dame is taking seriously what the president made reference to it before, Father Robert, your inaugural speech in September last year. It shows that Notre Dame is not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk. When you said that as Catholic university, we are called to push the frontiers of human knowledge, cultivating a disciplined sensibility to the poverty, injustice, and oppression that burdens the lives of so many. So it shows that you are taking that very, very seriously. The reform of the Roman Curia is aimed at making it a more effective instrument for supporting the Church's mission of evangelization and integral human development, in particular by addressing internal inefficiencies and focusing on the pastoral and global needs of the Church. The Roman Curia is meant to better serve its role in advocating for justice, peace, and the dignity of the human person worldwide. And Pope Francis's focus on integral human development pushes the Church to move beyond inward-looking concerns and to engage more deeply with the most pressing issues of the progress of peoples, including poverty, inequality, ecological degradation. So his Curia reform supports his mission by making the Roman Curia and the global Catholic Church better equipped to respond to these challenges, ensuring that they act as a true servant in the world rather than as institutions concerned primarily with its own affairs. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Monsignor. May I recognize our Dean, Mary Gallagher, from the Keough School of Global Affairs. Thank you. Welcome. And now we have 14 minutes for questions. The floor is open. I think there's a mic somewhere that can go around. Yes, any can go around. Who wants to ask the first question? Over there.
I'm happy to do clubs unless I know sometimes we do students first, but I'm not a student. My name is Ed Jerkovic. I work here in the Keough School with the Pulte Institute for Global Development.
I missed your name.
Ed, yes. Thank you, Father Anthony, for being here. I'm curious to hear, similar to our work, the work of the Dicastery that was highlighted was focused a lot on projects and programs that are providing for needs. And I know you highlight then the fact that integral human development is, of course, not just focused on material need, but on the need of the whole person. And I find that in our work, so often the things that we do are focused first and foremost on material need. And we struggle every day and think and try and find frameworks and ways in which we can bridge further to try and address the integral aspect of the person, but often find that becomes bogged down in the needs of the moment or the chief goals of our funders, which are often more material. So I'm curious what sort of approach or insights might you have in the way your Dicastery approaches conversation with local churches or communities to think about how they ensure that that more integral approach is being taken?
First of all, we believe that development is not just something you do for somebody. You assist, you kind of create the environment, the context for people to grow and develop. And so for us as a dicastery, we have to be developed. We cannot give what we don't have. So as a staff, we have staff programs, and we have processes and things to enable us to become integrally or humanly and integrally developed. I say to people that maybe the Pope transferred me from the Secretariat of State to the Dicastery for Integral Human Development because he thought that I wasn't really developed, humanly and integrally. So I was catapulted from the Secretariat of State to the Dicastery for Integral Human Development. So we believe that it is not something you do for people, but you have to ensure that the structures are there to enable people to develop and not just dance to the tune of those who fund a particular project, but it has to be a kind of a more holistic understanding of who we are as human beings. And when we talk with bishops, we tell them that they themselves also have to, like Pope Francis did, that the reform is not about the reformed. It's both about the reformer and the reformed. So both of them would have to move from the status quo and engage in receptive dialogue. It's not just a dialogue of, I see what you see, but I see more. One of our professors in Rome used to say that. I see what you see, but I see more. No. He used to tell us as students. I said, no, I see what you see. Could you please share what you see? And perhaps together we can see more into who we are as members of the one human family. So for us as a dicastery, what we do, and we tell bishops when they come on ad limina or when we're engaged in issues concerning integral human development, we tell them to actually form people, to enable them understand what it means, what the need for people to be involved fully, consciously, and actively in eliminating any obstacle that impedes integral human development. But it is not something we do for people, but we create the context for it.
Thank you. Over here, Annie. Over here, please.
Hi, Monsignor. Thank you very much for your talk. My name is Max Kitchell. I'm a freshman. You talked some about how the dicastery works with the local bishops, the local dioceses. I'm curious, how much does your dicastery work with other dicasteries or other units of the Curia to achieve more integral human development?
Okay. Now, our response is chiefly pastoral, so that's why we work with local bishops. But then there are some aspects that are diplomatic too, like if you're talking about poverty or the issue of extractivism in Africa, there are some diplomatic and political issues there too. So what we do is that we collaborate with the Secretariat of State. And this goes back, chiefly to who the Pope is. The Pope wears two hats. He's both a prophet and a diplomat. So as a prophet, he tells the truth. He says, this is white or this is black, and that's how it is.
And as a diplomat, he doesn't.
As a diplomat, he does tell the truth, but with love. This is in the second letter of St. Peter, I think, it said, always be ready to give the account of the hope in you to anyone who demands that of. And he adds, but do that with love. So now, the quintessential definition of diplomacy is diplomacy is telling someone to go to hell in such a nice way that they look forward to the trip. Now, the Pope doesn't tell people to go to hell. But so we collaborate with the Secretariat of State. There are also contexts where we collaborate with, or where we work with Muslims and people of other religion. So in this case, we rely on the advice of the Dicastery for Interreligious Dialogue to assist us, to help us understand how we can address a particular problem in a particular region and in a particular country. But we start off by telling our Muslim brothers or Hinduist brothers to help us to eliminate this particular obstacle that is impeding the development, the integral human development of people. So we work together, we understand their religion, but religion is not the first thing we talk about. Our major, when we walk into a place or into a country or something, what we see, first of all, are human beings. We don't see Muslims or Nigerians or Australians, no. We see human beings who are suffering. We hear the cry of the poor. We hear the cry of the earth first.
Okay, I'm already starting to apologize to people who won't get to their questions, not because you talk too long, but just because the time is too short. Please.
Hi, my name's Amita. I'm a PhD student in theology, and I'm wondering. I haven't read Clement's book, so I don't. Maybe he gives a definition that's really helpful. But I find that words like dignity and integral human development are sometimes sort of soft words, right? Like there's not a lot of content to them, and I think that particularly comes into fruition when people have different definitions of what dignity would be, right? And in a very given case, I think the case right now that we're seeing the most is migration in the United States and people coming to the border, and both quote unquote sides of the issue claiming dignity as their value. And so I'm wondering if you can, does your dicastery focus on that? Is that something that you are looking into defining as church teaching?
Absolutely. The answer is absolutely. That's what we are doing actually this year. And Professor Sedmak's book is very crucial for us because he raised some questions there, and we are grappling with it. For now, our definition, our understanding of integral human development is dignity-based, but it's also based on the scripture. What Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. So we believe that integral human development is enabling everyone to have life and have it to the full, and making sure that no one is left behind. So that's the principle, the understanding we have. But of course, we are forever trying to, these things are infinitely perfectible. So, and that's why we have research. So we are still, it's an issue in our vision for this year. One of the key issues that we are going to address this year is the definition or understanding of integral human development. Morgan.
Yes, Morgan from the Nanovic Institute. Thank you, Father. My question relates to the process that your dicastery works through with listening, reflection, and communication. And you, of course, as you said, listen first to those people, to the diocese, to the bishops. And you mentioned, or in the video mentioned, the second part involves consulting with experts. To what extent do the people who you are trying to, work for and with also help provide solutions or help influence the strategic work of trying to figure out how to do better, if that makes sense?
Yeah. As I said before, nothing gets done in the Roman Curia within 9 months. It's a process that requires patience. At the moment, one of the key issues we are reflecting on is the issue of disability. And that was raised at the synod. So the Pope said, this came up at the synod, and I want you to reflect on. So are those who are those with disability, are they less human? And in what way can the church help to recognize and notice them, to put them first? And now, and this is one thing that is very, very unique about Pope Francis's reform. He lives it. Now, about a few years ago, when I was in Secretariat of State, we used to go down for the general audiences. And at this audience, the Pope gave it the catechesis and everything. And usually at the end of the catechesis, cardinals and bishops will line up in pecking order and to say, to greet the Pope. So I was asked to stay behind because some big wig was visiting, and so that I can interpret. So I was standing behind the Pope with the other officials. We are all looking holy and dignified. And so the cardinals and bishops were all lined up. And they had arranged that a bishop on a wheelchair will come last. So we were standing on the podium. So the Pope saw the bishop and then bolted, went down the podium and greeted him first, and then came back. Now, for me, that was, it's an amazing, it's a surreal moment to say, you come first, you count. You know, you are the first, not the cardinals. Now, for me, that's seeing with the eye of integral human development, the eye of faith. To know that this person shouldn't come last because he's on the wheelchair. And yes, going back to your question, we do rely on experts, and it takes time. The issue of disability, it might take at least 2 to 3 years for us to get to understand because it's multifaceted. It's very complex. We haven't been able to actually follow a particular issue to the end, because this current structure that we are following as a dicastery was established 2 years ago. Although our dicastery was created in 2016, but mind you, it's a bunching up of about 4 Curia institutions, and it takes time for them to kind of get their bearings and then function. So it was only in 2 years. It was only 2 years ago that we came up with the structure we are using now. But it's a hard work to get experts, to engage them. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes patience.
The last question, Professor Powers. A brief question.
I know you can't comment on U.S. policy, but you do have a global view that all of us don't have. What are you seeing with the shutdown of the USAID, for example, and the impact on the Catholic Church worldwide and its ability to do work on development and other related issues?
We, as a dicastery, are concerned, of course, because the policies they pose like an obstacle against integral human development. We are concerned, and we are collaborating with bishops, especially the U.S. bishops, to see how we can provide a solution. We are talking. We are concerned, and the attitude that is expected of us, certainly from the Pope, is not to kick the can down the road. No, we're not going to do that. We have to engage in dialogue, because we are intrinsically, believe it or not, we are intrinsically relational. We are created to be intrinsically relational. And once anybody cuts himself off from the other, that is kind of it's not good. It means death, so to speak. So we have to engage with people, and patiently and meaningfully and fruitfully. It is time consuming, but we have to keep going. It's a serious issue, but we have to keep going. So at the moment, we are like a rabbit caught in the headlight, but we're praying. We are trying to dialogue with different local realities to find ways to make sure that no one is left behind.
Thank you. If you had one sentence to help us with our journey as we continue, what would this sentence be?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Father. All right. Do you remember the choreography that I outlined in my so long introduction? I apologize, Father President. So after the talk, there is a gift. And this is not a bottle of wine. It is, what is it actually? A comparison between the domes of the Papal Basilica of St. Peter and the main building of the University of Notre Dame. Artist Gregory Young, Bachelor of Architecture 2016. Greg is from a small town in Alabama and a convert to Roman Catholicism. His primary interests are in finding ways classical culture and civilization can be relevant and inform us in the modern world. He has chosen architecture as the mother of the arts to be the central way in which he explores these themes. If you put this in your office for all the Zoom meetings in the background, we would appreciate it. This is for you. Peter, yeah. Yes. Thank you. 1 minute. Yeah. Can you look overjoyed and humble? Let's go. We will ship it. You don't have to carry it in hand luggage.
Thank you.
Mel is kind enough to ship it. Thank you so much. All right, friends. Thank you so much, Monsignor Ekpo. Thank you for being here. There is, I was told, a reception waiting outside of this room, which we're about to leave in a second. Thank you again. I want to thank my colleagues at the Nanovic Institute for making this possible, and our colleagues in the technology section, and Peter for photography, that this was a memorable event where we have memories created as well. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening and the rest of your lives. Thank you.